Marilyn Manson once said, "In any story, the villain is the catalyst. The hero is not a person who will bend the rules or show the cracks in his armor. He's one-dimensional intentionally, but the villain is the person who owns up to what he is and stands by it." Hi, I'm Motyl from the Toy Talk Guys, and as you could probably gather from this quote, Mr. Manson could possibly be referring to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1, Episode 4, Oppressing Engagement. It's up for your interpretation, or he could also be referring to the unaired pilot episode, both of which feature the subject of today's review. For those of you who only share a passing glance casual interest for Power Rangers, let me offer you this brief synopsis so that we may all appreciate this information on the same level.
The long and short of it is that an intergalactic nefarious space witch, Rita Repulsa, is freed from her prison of 10,000 years and is now a threat to Earth in present day. Luckily, an ancient protector, Zordon, has prepared for this inevitable circumstance and took it upon himself to create morphers, power coins, and dinosaurs, an arsenal that will be wielded by none other than 5 teenagers with attitude known as the Power Rangers. Heroes versus villains, good versus evil in its purest form. Each episode usually consisted of Rangers staving off an attacker sent down by Rita in attempts to destroy them and ultimately conquer Earth. There were varying degrees of enemies that fit in different tiers and levels of Rita's space army, all of which are slated to be covered in other videos. The important bit of information relevant for this entry is that there were reoccurring enemies of the series, as well as enemies only debuting in one episode. Our subject today fits perfectly under the latter. He's known by many as King Sphinx, and known by few as Fly Guy. The character debuted officially in the 4th episode of the series and wouldn't make any kind of meaningful return ever again. To this guy's credit, he fought well against the Rangers and had an imposing presence in his episode, but why even discuss him now? Well, the accidental legacy this character left behind is mind-blowing. King Sphinx was merchandised back in the day to a peculiar and questionable degree. He was featured on Power Rangers school supplies, trading cards, jigsaw puzzles, party favors, and even a starring role in his own board game. He was also programmed as a boss in 2 separate video games. Quite the resume for a once-and-done villain who probably only had about 10 to 12 minutes of official screen time. It didn't even stop there. He was also released in several action figure forms, the most remembered of which most likely being the 8-inch vinyl figure. This toy didn't offer much else other than 4 points of articulation and a degree of durability for your Ranger figures to beat up on. It's also worth mentioning that King Sphinx fought loyally alongside Goldar, who was Rita's #1 general and enforcer. These 2 characters look great next to each other, sharing similar features, themes, and stature. Now, this was probably a big contributing factor to the King's exaggerated existence outside of the show. More on that later. King Sphinx was also released in several minifigure forms, including a 3-inch collectible figure, a Micro Machine style figure with flapping wing action, and an even smaller scale Party Favor style figure. I can't find confirmation if this figure was released in the US or not, but back in the day he could be found in other countries, hidden in surprise chocolate eggs produced by the company Tombola, almost like the Nestle's Magic Balls we had here. He's difficult to find, so I recommend hitting eBay hard for him. An even rarer Sphinx figure was released outside of the US in the form of a slot car. He was featured in a racetrack set pitted against the Red Ranger Jason. Why? Well, how did he do it? Why did King Sphinx get this much attention? In many of these incarnations, he's always seen standing next to Rita's immediate advisors and underlings, as if he ranks differently than other once-and-done villains. A theme that exists in modern day, as this character was released yet again in action figure form under the Imaginext brand.
It's 2018. You can go to a toy aisle in a store and buy a King Sphinx figure. It boggles the mind and begs the question, how? Theories around this matter have all attributed the character's popularity to his appearance in the unaired pilot.
As I mentioned earlier, King Sphinx was originally named Fly Guy for this unofficial episode, and they used all the same footage of him that's seen in the official episode 4. It's been thought that merchandising developers saw the potential for this show early on after only seeing this unofficial pilot. They most likely designed everything around the characters featured in this one single episode, not yet knowing the reoccurring formula. Rinse and repeat could have been this show's motto, as every week the Rangers would slay a brand new monster, but King Sphinx was unofficially the first. As I also mentioned earlier, this resemblance to Goldar was more than likely a contributing factor in this confusion as well. I grew up with this franchise, and before the tools of the internet, I remember looking back fondly on King Sphinx, and as a child exposed to all of his merchandise, I just accepted him as a regularly featured villain back in the early days. I can still remember thinking that very thought as a kid. Well, he's all over the place, so I'm probably just remembering it wrong. Or I missed a bunch of the episodes he was in. I also thought, oh, he's usually around Goldar, right? I think they might have been related. Nope. Just a simple mistake made by merchandisers that exploded into obscurity, alongside the undeniable launching popularity of Power Rangers.
I also failed to mention that this character makes yet another appearance in one of the video games of today, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Mega Battle. He's achieved serious cult status unlike any other villain of the series. We at Toy Talk Guys salute you, King Sphinx. You've managed to remain relevant 20-some years later, even when you were only arguably relevant back then.